Okay, my name is Lawrence McGlynn, and you're listening to the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor here on WPPM 106.5 FM in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Blue Sky at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHMWPPM. Tonight on the program, Denise Clay Murray will update us on the 3rd congressional race. Lance Haver will provide an update on the water rate increases. Vanessa Maria Graver will report on the homeless encampment Camp Chloe, and we will get into last week's budget address. Denise, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Now tell people where you are.
Right now, I am in the prayer room at Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church in, I guess it's like the Alney section of the city, where they are going to be hosting a candidates forum for the 3rd Congressional District. For those of you who may not know it by that name, this is the seat that U.S. Rep. Dwight Evans currently holds. He's not running for re-election. He's decided to retire at the end of his term in January 2027. And right now, there are 9, well, at least there were 9 candidates vying for the seat that has since been knocked down to 8. And those 8 will be on stage tonight here at Enon Tabernacle. So if you want to come out and see what they have to say, or if you want to listen to what they have to say, they're going to be, you can come, it starts at 7, and you can check it out, or you can listen to it on WURD, which is where you can hear me and Larry tomorrow for Philadelphia City Council Live. And that starts at 7 as well. So that's what I'm doing here. That's why I'm in the prayer room, because at 7 o'clock we start the forum.
Are there a lot of key differences here between these candidates?
Not really. This is a Democratic primary. If there's any difference, it's in levels of name recognition. The current frontrunner is State Senator Sharif Street. And when it comes to name recognition, there are a few people in this race that have as much of it as he does. His father, John Street, was the mayor of Philadelphia. He was the leader of the Commonwealth's Democratic Party for a while. So everyone knows who Sharif Street is. Probably the only person with almost as much name recognition as he has is Dr. Ayla Stanford. Dr. Stanford was the person who went into places like North Philadelphia and West Philadelphia and made sure that people got tested for COVID and were able to get COVID vaccines during the pandemic. She's the founder of the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium, and she kind of made a name for herself, making sure that people got the health care they needed during that time. So in terms of name recognition, it's those two that probably have the most. But you also have some state reps in the mix. State reps Morgan Cephas and Christopher Rabb, who's been on a program, who's been on Hall Monitor, are both running for the race. The difference is Representative Cephas is also running simultaneously for her seat in the state legislature, while State Rep Rabb has decided to push all of his chips in the center for the congressional race. He just got an endorsement from Benjamin Crump. Now, there might be people who listen to Hall Monitor know who Benjamin Crump is. He is the lawyer that we first heard of when Trayvon Martin was killed in Florida. He was the one that represented the family, and he's represented other families since then. Freddie Gray out in Baltimore, George Floyd in Minnesota, Michael Brown in Missouri. So there have been, other things that he's a prominent civil rights attorney, and he just endorsed Christopher Rabb. Now, in terms of local endorsements, most of them have gone to Sharif Street. A lot of folks in council have, said he's their guy. There are other elected officials that have said he's their guy. But the elected official that currently holds the seat, Dwight Evans, has endorsed Dr. Stanford as his choice to take over his seat. So tonight, you'll hear from all of those people, get to see what they stand for, and hopefully we'll get something different out of it. Because after a while, when you do enough of these forums, or you cover enough of these forums, or you listen to enough of these forums, they all start to sound alike.
Right.
The questions, I mean, the answers to the questions never really change. So I'm hoping that we get some different answers tonight.
Now, as a moderator of this debate, I don't want you to give out your questions on the air. That wouldn't work. But what are some of the main topics that you think people should be following and that these candidates should have to speak to?
I think that probably the main thing that I would keep an eye on is what they think about coffee table issues. Because let's face it, if nothing else, the fact that right now the Strait of Hormuz has basically been closed off to any and all traffic because Iran has decided, since you guys are bombing us, we're going to bomb anything that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. Coffee table issues like whether or not the price of groceries is going up, the price of gas, the price of utilities. All of those things are things that, they're coffee table issues, but they're coffee table issues that are impacted by what goes on in Washington. So I would keep an eye out for those. I would keep an eye out for whether or not they're going to discuss SNAP, because SNAP is something that these folks will be having to deal with. Medicaid is something that they're going to have to deal with. So I would keep an eye on how they respond to those challenges. And I would also make sure that it's not just talking points, because after a while, again, if you sit through enough of these, the talking points have been practically memorized. Yeah. So that's kind of what I would keep an eye out for. And especially since we're not far from the primary. The primary is May 19th. And this is a chance for folks to actually start to pin people down a little bit on what they actually stand for.
Yeah. And that's important, especially in a large field like this, all Democrats, there's a lot of overlap.
Right.
So you're looking for what separates them. And, and electability, we'll be honest, isn't really a major concern here, because they're probably, I don't think there's a Republican on the ballot.
Well, no, actually, and that's weird about this race, because I had heard initially that 2 Republicans were running for the office, but neither of them is in the Republican primary ballot.
Right.
And I wonder what that's about. But then again, when you look at like the city's Republican Party, to say it's disorganized would be the understatement of the year. This is a party that has had periods where it was organized and they did regularly run candidates. And even when it comes to city politics, the Republicans still put people out there. But this is an open seat. And I would think that, either of the 2 Republicans I had heard were considering it, one at least would have tried to get on the ballot.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened here.
No. And, they're replacing Dwight Evans, who had one of the most prestigious assignments you can get in Congress, which is the Ways and Means Committee. Very powerful tax writing committee. Everything goes through Ways and Means. And my only concern is I don't know that anybody from this field is going to be able to get an assignment like that in the beginning.
Not as freshmen.
No, and they're going to be backbenchers for a while. So while their answers are very important, we have to keep in mind they're one of 435 members of Congress, and they're going to be at the very end of the tenure stick. So it's, I wouldn't expect miracles in the first term.
No, and I think that in the case of people like a Sharif Street, someone who has been in leadership, someone who has been in charge of things, that may be the biggest adjustment they have to make.
Yeah.
Same thing with Dr. Stanford and even Morgan Cephas. These are people who have been in leadership positions. And they're going to be going into not only one of the most dysfunctional legislative bodies ever created, possibly, but they're going to be going in at a time where no matter what happens in the House, the Senate is probably going to remain Republican led. And because of that, anything that you could have thought up is never going to get past the House unless it's something that can be voted on in a majority vote. And there's very little in the Senate that applies to. Part of the reason why the Save America Act has not come up for a vote is because because the Republicans cannot get the 60 people needed to vote to end debate and bring it up for a vote.
Right.
Even with John Fetterman, saying he would vote for cloture, they can't get another 9 people. There are even Republicans who refuse to close debate on this. So, right now, like I said, Congress is really kind of dysfunctional because it's filled with people who can't seem to work together. And that is the environment whoever wins this race ultimately is going to be going into. And I guess because they're members of the Pennsylvania legislature, they are kind of used to that in a way, because it's not like, the Pennsylvania legislature has been all that much unlike Congress in this regard. But, the bottom line is, you would like to get stuff done. Your constituents would like to get stuff done. And that's not something you're necessarily guaranteed as a freshman going into this Congress.
That's right. So there's a lot more to come in this race. We'll be following it very closely. We got almost exactly 2 months before the primary, and a lot can happen. So we'll see if all these candidates make it to the end. Some might drop out. You never know. But I think the core group, the ones most likely to win, are going to stay in. And, a wide field like this, a lot could happen.
Yeah. All you got to do is look at like the 2023 mayor's race.
Yep.
There were people that we thought were going to be, the strongest contenders. And that's not what happened.
Yeah. So now, turning to another citywide issue, last week, Denise, Mayor Cherelle Parker gave her fiscal year 2027 budget address. The budget that will start in July of 2026 is the 2027 budget. It's very confusing why these things happen the way they do, but the fiscal new year starts on July 1st. So we have a little bit we can talk about. And what I'd like to talk a little bit about this week, and we're gonna have more on this throughout the entire spring, right up until the thing is passed, which will be in June. I want to highlight tonight just some of the things that Mayor Parker highlighted in her speech, some of the key things that she mentioned. So let me pull this up here. See if we can see that. And it's hard for me to read it. I just realized that. Let me see if I can make that bigger. There we go. So what are we talking about, Denise? We're talking about a $6.97 billion budget. All right, almost $7 billion. $227 million in new operating investments, $281 million in new capital investments, $642 million in new operating investments over the next 5 years, the 5-year plan, which is something we talk about. And we will talk more about that in subsequent shows. And $1.5 billion over the 6-year capital program. And capital expenses are buildings and things that last a long time that have to be maintained. So those are the early numbers. Some of these might change as council and the administration go back and forth with numbers, but as of right now, that's where we are. I don't expect the budget, the overall number, to come down at all. If anything, it might go up a little bit. That's usually what happens. If that number changes, it usually goes up, not down. So that's where we're starting. So here are a couple of the things that the mayor highlighted. $25 million in community-based anti-violence grants for fiscal year 27. And one of the key things that I think is really important to discuss with this are the groups that get these anti-violence grants going to get support on how to manage the money. That was something
that is probably the most important question.
Yeah, because the Kennedy administration didn't follow up on that. They gave out the money, and they told. I remember we asked that question specifically: is there going to be support for a group that maybe hasn't brought in a lot of money like this? Now all of a sudden they're flush with money. They might not know what to do, and there were problems because nobody helped them. So hopefully, that's going to be in the plan. The rainy day fund will be $344 million by the end of the 5-year plan. That's important. We'll see if that holds up, because who knows how much money the city's going to have to use to fill in federal gaps that may occur over the next couple of years. Keeping my fingers crossed that doesn't happen. This is an important one. Pensions will be fully funded by FY33. By FY29, they'll be funded 80% of the way. And what that means is, it doesn't mean people are only getting 80% of their pension or whatever. It means that the city only has enough money to pay for 80%. They borrow the rest of the money. So if they're short on pension obligations, they will borrow money, and that costs the city a lot more because they have to pay back the bonds. So having the pension fund fully funded is a big deal. Cities, my understanding is cities across the country have pension issues. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia's are a little worse because at one point, in I think it was the 70s and maybe early 80s, the city gave out some pretty crazy pensions, some pretty generous pensions, like 100% of your salary pensions, which
oh my gosh,
doesn't happen. Yeah. So
and you also have to figure in the drop program.
Oh my God, yeah.
Where you had people where you had city employees that the city found so valuable that they allowed them to get a chunk of their pension while they continue to work to keep them from leaving.
You had to retire for one day, and then you came back for 4 years, and you got this large chunk of money, which was significant, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases, depending on how long you worked in the city. The 5-year plan includes the debt service for the home borrowing, which is going to be between $25 and $50 million a year on debt service. That's what happens. When you borrow money, there's going to be an amount you have to pay back. What do you think about this one, Denise? $10 million to build modular housing.
I think that when you consider the fact that there was already much money in the budget once upon a time for tiny houses, and Mayor Parker said she didn't like tiny houses, even though I have seen some tiny houses that I myself would live in happily.
Yeah.
She didn't want to build tiny houses. I don't understand how modular housing, which is basically like housing, it's like Lego housing, where you get a piece of land, you put a foundation down, and you like build Lego housing, kind of like. I don't know what the difference is. I don't get this, but it's housing in a place where we really need housing. So
yeah, and I think it's worth a try. Tiny houses seem like a really good idea to me. Mayor Parker didn't feel that way. This might be the next best thing. So we'll see. This next one, I think we're going to see a big push on this. $10 million for workforce development. There was a hearing in City Council today. And Council President Kenyatta Johnson was the person who had the bill introduced on his behalf, or the resolution to have this hearing today that was all about workforce development. So you see $10 million in the mayor's budget. You see council having hearings on this. I think workforce development in terms of training, helping people get jobs, and a really key point, helping people develop the literacy skills.
Because That's probably that's why there's a lot of people that are out of work, because there are literacy issues. If you
Yeah.
can't fill out an application, either be it online or on paper, you're not going to be able to get a job. And the fact that that's something that's very rarely talked about when we talk about workforce development is important. So it's going to be interesting to see just how much this goes up, because you're right. If particularly if there are enough members of council that want to see it go up, how much further it goes up is going to be interesting. But I kind of want to go back on something regarding the debt service for home borrowing. What about the debt service for the wellness system borrowing? Is that
Yeah.
included in the 5-year plan as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's, I want to say, I don't want to put it out. No, I might be wrong. I'm thinking around 5 million a year for that. I could be wrong about that though, but yeah, that's in there because they've already started paying on that.
Oh, okay.
The one thing I just want to mention about the workforce development, one of the numbers that came out of the hearing this morning, I didn't think that the problem was this severe, but 400,000 Philadelphians maybe aren't functionally illiterate, but have issues with reading, and that's way too many. When there are things we can do about that.
Yeah, part of, like, when Jim Kenney was still mayor, he had a read by fourth grade program. I think we still do it as a city, and that part of the reason for that was to not only address the issue of kids being able to read, but also to encourage their parents who may have issues with reading to read with them. And it's, when you talk about it being an issue for workforce development, Chris Murray, my husband, when he's not covering sports and stuff for Hall Monitor, is also an English professor at Bowie State University. And the main thing he's seeing is young people who do not know how to read, and they are freshmen in college.
Yeah.
So, they may have been able to get through the standardized test, they may have been able to get through their classes, but they don't read for comprehension. And there are certain jobs where if you don't know how to read for comprehension, you could get, a whole lot of bad things could result.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's significant. And it's really important that the city works on this. They've done some things.
Mhm.
The City College for Municipal Employment at the community college, I think, is a really good idea, a good step in the right direction. Some people have gone through that and have gotten city jobs. But one of the things that could be expanded to is reading help, and some people, I don't think it's anybody's fault. I just think some people maybe, the school system wasn't spectacular when they were younger, and maybe they had some trouble with it and it never got corrected. Well, we're at a point now where we should be able to correct that for people. We should be able to help people with that. So it's good to see that there's some attention being paid to this right now. 1.9 million to expand the extended day, extended year program for students. This is the school program where students can have extracurricular activities in the after school, in some cases before school, and then over the summer. And it's good for parents too, because it gives them more flexibility in terms of picking their kids up and that kind of thing. An extra 7 million for the Community College for Municipal Employees program. That's what we just talked about, and that seems like a good idea. There's a lot of good that can come from that, because the city still has about 20 to 25% of their positions unfilled, and part of the reason why is they're not, in some cases, and department heads have told me, we don't get applicants who check the boxes. They don't have all the skill set we need. Well, now you have a place where they can learn that, and then they can come right in and get the job. So it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone, right? You get somebody who needs a job, you train them, and you bring them in, and the city gets what they're looking for. So this is a potentially very good program. I want to mention this too, and I have some mixed feelings about this. So we're going to create some new taxes, Denise. I'm not necessarily against that. These taxes will net an extra $12 million for the school district. Okay. So the two taxes that are going to do that are the transportation network company tax. So that means if you use Uber or Lyft, or I think there are other ones now too, there will be a 20-cent excise tax on that ride. Okay. And an excise tax is just a tax that's built into the price, kind of like gasoline, built into it when you go and pay for it. That's going to net almost 10 million a year. And then they're going to amend the use and occupancy tax to include antennas for like cell phones. That's going to bring in about 2.5 million a year. Okay. I'm not against really either one of those things. I haven't studied it a lot, but it seems okay. But the question I keep coming back with is, if you hadn't cut the property taxes a couple years ago, maybe we don't need to start thinking about this. I don't know. I'm just saying.
It's one of those things where you're going to have to pay for it somehow. Another tax that the mayor mentioned is on like food delivery.
Yeah.
Like DoorDash and stuff like that. The only question I have is whether or not this is like because food is exempted. I want to know if food is exempted if you get it at the grocery store and you have to cook it yourself, or if it's all food that's exempted. Like if I'm, in City Hall and we're, covering the budget and we're hungry and we can't necessarily leave because we're afraid we're going to miss the vote. If we call DoorDash and like order a pizza, are we going to have to pay extra for that?
Yeah.
And the thing is, that and the Uber, that and the ride share tax are the only two things that everybody has been complaining to me about.
Yeah.
Oh, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Everybody uses Uber, everybody uses Lyft. But something? The mayor made a good point when she said that the people who use the roads should be the ones helping to pay to maintain them.
That's
and
right.
I have no problem. 20 cents a ride is not going to hurt me. No. 20 cents a ride is not going to hurt most people. If you can afford to get on an Uber and a Lyft, 20 cents is not going to bother you all that much.
No.
However, if you have a pothole and you're driving in your car and it's a car that you're barely able to pay the insurance and the car note on, and you can avoid hitting that pothole and having to pay $1 million for your tires, that benefits you. So is it annoying to hear that there's probably going to be another tax charged? Yes. Is it something that, is it going to, a place where the city, is getting some use out of it? Yeah, at least we know where that particular tax is going. There have been other taxes that the city has imposed. We still don't know what they're doing with these things.
Yeah.
So at least we know, where this is going.
Yep. Just to skip ahead a little bit, 900 million for SEPTA over 5 years. That helps, but it doesn't fill in the gap completely. They're going to continue the zero fare program that costs about 25 million a year, which is free SEPTA rides for people who qualify. It's a good idea. $10 million to cover fares for city employees. The pothole squad, Denise. This is the one that's going to be covered by some of those new taxes. $7.1 million for it. Okay. The retail delivery tax of 25 cents per order, which will raise about 15 million. So that's how we're going to cover that. Almost 12 million, 11.5 million for tree planting and graffiti clear up. Almost $180 million in capital investments for Parks and Rec. 1,000 new beds for a program to end homelessness. That's going to be about $20 million a year. We're going to take some of the opioid settlement funds, about 211 million of which to fight addiction in Kensington. $550 million for collective bargaining. That means when the unions come back to the negotiating table, there's money set aside for raises and things like that. $33 million for HVAC upgrades at libraries. A lot of them need that.
Oh yeah.
A lot of them have these very antiquated systems, so it's really needed. And then $50 million for the relocation of the African American Museum. That's been going on for a while now.
And
So
no one knows exactly where it's going to go.
right,
Because the original space that was going to be used for it, apparently it's not going to be used for it anymore.
right.
And the idea was to bring the African American Museum onto the Parkway with the other museums. So it's going to be interesting to see where this $50 million takes the museum and what happens with the museum as a result. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So that's a nutshell. We're going to have more stuff to talk about next week, the week after. We're also going to preview every department when they come in for their budget hearing. So we're going to start that next week. So there's a lot more to talk about with budget. We're going to have more in the newsletter. A lot going on. So it's going to be an interesting couple of months while we figure out exactly where everything's going.
But another thing I really want people to focus on is the 1,000 new beds for the people who are homeless. Because from what the mayor is saying in regards to this, it is part of a wraparound program.
Yeah.
Which is not only going to provide beds, but also other services that homeless people need, like connections with healthcare, connections with housing, connections with employment, connections with like mental health and different things. So and we also are still trying to find out whether or not these are going to be newly created places or if they're going to be put in places the city already owns. Because right now there is a place that used to be a place for the homeless when they had Code Blues in Council Member Jeffrey Young's district that the city can no longer rent because the mayor was talking about bringing in people who were coming in from Kensington and putting them there. And because certain things weren't worked out between the two of them, council passed a resolution making it so no one can rent that space for people who need housing, for the unhoused. So it's going to be interesting to see where those places go, where these new beds go.
So switching things up a little bit, on March 11th, Tower Investment representatives came to the 1525 South Columbus Boulevard to forcibly remove the established community of unhoused residents who have been living there. On Monday, a coalition of South Philly homeless advocates held a rally to gather support for the community and demand that the city stop any further evictions until all residents have permanent housing. Organizers say the owners of the property are acting illegally since there have been no legal process, including obtaining a court order or rejection to require the residents to leave. Residents listed 4 demands they have for Mayor Cherelle Parker and expect the sanitation workers will return this Friday to attempt to force unhoused residents off the premises. Hall monitors Vanessa Maria Graber attended the press conference on Monday and recorded the participants' voices. So here is Vanessa at that press conference.
Thank you everyone for coming out today to support Camp Chloe, which is the encampment that has been set up and the community that has lived here and been pushed from pier to pier to spot with no assistance, no safety, and has actually been harassed by developers, by the city of Philadelphia. And we're here today as organizers to stand in solidarity with this beautiful community. When the city does a sweep, they are breaking up a chosen family. When the city tells people to go into shelters, they are breaking up chosen families and communities of safety. And we are calling on Mayor Parker to stop this cycle of violence. Mayor Parker, we invite you to come down to Camp Chloe. If you care so much about housing that you are going to flaunt it in your budget, then put your money where your mouth is. Come and treat people with dignity and dignify their demands with a negotiation.
Yeah, that's right. A few of us were on the ground with the residents here, and a call came in and people were told that that they had to get down. So we reacted. A few of us came down. We stood in solidarity with residents. When we went around and we asked the police what they were going to do, or what the OHS were going to do, the Office of Homeless Services, they were on the edges. They said they could not do anything. They were just going to stand there. They did not have anything to offer anyone. They were just going to stand there and then let people's possessions be taken and destroyed. There was a team of people with a truck. They took I think maybe two or three people's, four people's possessions, tents, personal possessions, and they put them in the tractor, in the trash truck. That, like, you can't just come into people's homes and then take it. People have a right to be with notice, told to be treated with respect. People are living there, and of course they stood outside because they didn't have any legal basis for even being there. Because of course, if people are there, if they're sitting there, if the owner already knows people are there for a long period of time, they didn't just get there. They've got to negotiate. They've got to treat people with respect. They got to say that, oh, okay, we're doing something with a property. Okay, we need you to do this or that. We need to understand that we can't just come through and like wipe people out like that. It's not right. I think we all know that it's not right. We want to have the city, Gladstein, other owners come out here and actually talk to people and treat them with respect and dignity and say, what is the workable solution? Be real. Come on.
I'm so excited to introduce you and honored to introduce you to one of the encampment residents from Camp Chloe. Just a note, Camp Chloe comes from the name of the dog who lives at the encampment. Chloe is her name. She's a sweetie pie. She goes around and checks on all the residents and lets them know when people are coming to trespass. And we thought was the perfect mascot of what it means to practice community safety and community care. I'm gonna invite Chris, who is a resident, up to to announce the establishment of a community oversight board and to read out their grievances and demands. Take it away. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
That's right.
That's my man, Nick. Okay, so my name's Chris. I've been out here for a while, couple years. You know, dealt with all the moving around, getting kicked out. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, I'm a victim of recidivism and just being a part of the system, and you know, not really having the right avenues to get housing as far as my personal reasons for being out here. But you know, we built a community out here. We love each other and we all take care of each other. Yeah, Chloe is our mascot. She is the mascot, and she does take care. I mean, she you know, dogs just give a lot of love, and we're in a place where, you know, you don't get too much love, you know. Nobody wants you, you know. Nobody wants, you know, in a place where nobody really wants you there, you know. I mean, I love you guys. Thanks for being here, seriously, and rallying for us, because we never had a voice. We always just got kicked out and moved around, and yeah. So we got demands, and we got 4 of them. Miss Mayor Parker, this is for you. All right. We got established, sanctioned encampments, basically safe sleep sites. All right. So instead of a move or be moved cycle, the city should designate specific areas where people can legally camp. These sites should provide basic hygiene, 24/7 security to prevent violence, which is like, you know, self administered security. Like we'll do our own security, basically. You know. Fixed address where outreach workers can consistently find people to help with housing vouchers. Yeah. So that's our first demand. Safe sleep sites. All right. We just want a place to go. Really. We just want, you know, somewhere where we could be and not be illegal and keep getting kicked out of and doing this all over again. Okay. Demand number 2. Implement a property receipt. So when we get kicked out, you know, they throw everything out. We just want a record of that, basically. And Yeah, we want a resolution. It's got to be logged with the physical receipt, basically, and a storage and accessible location, non-police, property advocates. So basically, everybody here that's for us, we want to advocate and be there if it happens. If we get moved, we just want a record of it. All of our stuff. All right. That was demand 2.
What a mad reasonable. Jesus.
All right, on to 3. Housing first over shelter first. Many people avoid shelters because of safety concerns, lack of privacy, separation from partners, pets. The city Mayor Parker should prioritize permanent supportive housing directly from the street and utilize the $2 billion housing plan. The $2 billion of $2 billion with a B. And fast track low barrier navigation centers that allow pets and couples. There's a lot of people back here that have girlfriends and pets, honestly, and we don't want to leave our significant other or our dog or cat, and they're part of our family. And basically we don't want to leave honestly each other. We've been around each other for so long. It's like we're family, So yeah, that'd be nice if we could, do something with that $2 billion, Ms. Parker. Create an oversight board with lived experience. Decisions about this is demand 4. We want to create an oversight board. Decisions about encampments are currently made by people who have never slept in one, and the city should create a paid oversight committee of currently formerly unhoused individuals. This board would have the power to review resolution plans before they happen to make sure they are humane. Yep, that's the 4th demand. Yeah, basically we just want, people who have lived this and have experienced this to advocate for us. Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming out today. I am not a lawyer. I am not a city official. I don't own property. I'm a neighbor. And I'm a member of the South Philadelphia Food Not Bombs chapter. We've known some members of this community for almost 3 years. If you were to meet this community, we could tell you who could teach you about Greek mythology, who could teach you how to build, who could help you with language study. We could tell you how everyone likes their coffee and who has a particular affinity for lemon tea or extra powder in their hot chocolate. We've celebrated birthdays, we've grieved loss together, we've protected one another, and for those of us who come out to help the encampment, we've also received support on our bad days. If you were to meet this community, you would know that these residents are your neighbors too, who just happen to live outside while you happen to live inside. There's a false and unreasonable standard we hold to our neighbors. Can somebody hold this for me? My hands are shaking. There is a false and unreasonable standard we hold to neighbors who happen to live outside. I can think of many homeowners, much more wealthy people in this city who deserve to be under far more scrutiny than those who happen to live outside. The residents here need to be known for who they are and what they've contributed to this city. They are teachers, engineers, social workers, electricians, builders. They are part of the fabric of this city. If plumbers. If city officials want to talk about community, then they have to stop pushing community out only to build high-rise apartments no one can afford and shopping malls that lay destitute. We pour concrete over land that is capable of housing and feeding us in a responsible and ethical way. Philadelphia already has the housing to offer to everyone here. The solution is always housing. The solution is also always choice and autonomy. The constant displacement is too disruptive to build something that is meant to offer safety and solace.
All right. Well, we would like to thank Vanessa for doing that reporting, and we will have more on the situation at Camp Chloe in subsequent episodes. Now I'd like to bring on Lance Haver to tell us a little bit about what's going on with the water rates.
Good afternoon, good evening, actually, right?
Yep.
That was a very sad report. I'm a little confused because there's something called riparian rights. No one's supposed to own the land on the side of the river, which is where the encampment was, so I don't know how the city can decide people don't have a right to be there. But it is water, and I'm reporting on water, and I feel like this is every year. Around this time, I make the announcement, water rates are going to go up. And every year, it starts out with a letter that goes to the council members. And I'm just going to bring that up so that everyone can have a quick look at what it is that we're talking about. That is, if I can somehow get it up. There we go. So this will be the 8th year in a row that water rates are going to go up. Part of the rate increase this year was given to them last year. The water department and the rate board and the rate board's advocate like to give the water department not 1, but 2 years worth of rate increases in 1 year. So the second increase is hidden. On top of that, they're asking for what they call a rate adjustment. Now that's very fancy language for another increase in rates. So we're talking about a 7.8% across the board rate increase for everyone who's paying a water bill. But they don't like to say that. This is what they tell council. Dear President Johnson and member of city councils, the purpose of this correspondence is to provide the advance notice, defined below, to Philadelphia City Council of proposed changes in rates and charges by the Philadelphia Water Department to implement the annual adjustment to the tiered assistance program rate rider and surcharge rates, and to revise, not raise, revise related water, sewer, and fire connection quality rates. And that's really at the essence of it. They are hiding exactly what's going on. And it's not an accident that this is the language. You have to read through many pages before you actually find out how much money they're asking for. And what are they asking for this rate increase for? One, to cover up their inefficiencies, to cover up their failures, to cover up the fact that they refuse to do anything to become more efficient. They're using it to continue to keep money in what they call the rate stabilization fund. Now that money has a hidden reason. The city of Philadelphia scoops the interest from that and puts it in the operating budget. So the more money that's in the stabilization fund, the rate stabilization fund, the better city is off. But most of this current rate increase is to pay for the TAP program, the Tiered Assistance Program. Now, it's a low-income program. It's a good program. It's a necessary program. But it costs ratepayers, not the city. As Larry, as you reported, the city is going to pay for housing for low-income workers. The city is going to pay to help homeless people find shelter. The city is going to pay for people who can't afford to ride SEPTA. But for some reason, the rate board and the advocate support putting a surcharge on water bills. Now, it's a tax, but again, the language is what they like. They want to call it a surcharge, but it's a tax on water bills to pay for this very important and very necessary low-income plan. And it's not nothing. It's $53 million a year, every year, and getting larger. Now, just to talk about TAP, and I'm going to try and walk through this very quickly. It gives a reduced bill. It wipes out whatever your old bill was. You get conservation. So if you have a leaky toilet or leaking pipes, the city's going to come out and fix that because it's in everyone's interest that we conserve as much water as possible. The actual really hard part about water and sewer bills are the sewer bills. So every leaking pipe that goes into the sewers raises everyone's consumption, everyone's bills, and everyone's demand. So we want to conserve as much as we can. And the other thing that it does is it lets people pay a percentage of their income. These are great plans, something that is necessary, something that we should have at PECO. And who qualifies? Well, it's 150% of poverty or less. And so for a family of 4, that's $48,225. If you make less than that, or you have a hardship, which is not really well defined, but you have a hardship, you can qualify for this program. But it's all kept secret. The hearing that's going on, nobody's going to know about because the rate board hires an advocate that's supposed to represent the public. They don't have a client group. They don't meet with community organizations. They don't meet with council members. They don't meet with anyone. It's completely their own doing what they decide. And what they typically have done in every year in the past is the water department files for much more than what it needs. They have hearings, but again, it doesn't really matter because nobody actually expects the hearings to be meaningful. Then they go into a back room and they negotiate a settlement. Now I say it's secret. They say that's what negotiations are in private. And when it's been challenged, what the hearing examiner writes, and there's a hearing examiner they use every single year, because every single year she goes along with this. It says there's no legal or regulatory mandate for an additional round of public input hearings when a settlement has been arrived at after the public has had an opportunity to comment on the original filing. So what happens is they ask for this rates. The rate board's advocate and the water department get behind closed doors and they say, here's what we're going to do to the public. And that's it. Nobody's allowed to comment on that because nobody knows about the settlement. And it's what's called a black box settlement. And that means we don't know what the money's going for. The public doesn't know what the money's going for. They just raise rates and they give it all to the water department. The water department can use it however it wants. And the hearing examiner attacks me and says, Mr. Haver's second argument that a black box settlement is improper because it prohibits the public from participating in the rate-making process and denies the public information is misguided. As discussed below, such revenue requirement agreements are a common element of utility rate settlements. It's not just the hearing examiner. The chair of the Water Rate Board says the same. With respect to the revenue requirement, this particular settlement is a black box agreement between the signatories, meaning the rate board's advocate, Community Legal Services, and the water department. This means that the joint petitioners, again, the advocate that the rate board hires and the water department, did not agree on the specific elements of the revenue requirement calculation. This type of revenue requirement resolution is not unusual. That's from the chair of the Water Rate Board. What they're somehow missing is what Governor Shapiro said in his state budget address this year. He attacked black box settlement. He said the reason why electric rates in Pennsylvania are so high is because of these black box settlements, and he wants to do away with them. He says that they're misguided, they cause people a fortune, and we cannot have them any longer. So here you have, people always say, well, Pennsylvania is really not a progressive state, right? The old joke is Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania and Philadelphia on one side and Alabama in the middle. But the Republicans pretty much control the center of the state, control the state Senate. We're not a progressive state by any stretch of the imagination. It's not Maine, Vermont, none of them, not Maryland. But the city of Philadelphia is supposed to be a progressive city. So here we have Governor Shapiro saying for the state, black box settlements should be illegal and never used. But we have the city of Philadelphia with progressive council people, with a progressive mayor saying, this is okay. Just give the water department whatever they want and let them use it whatever way they want. And that's just typical of what we're going to do. So that's really the issue. Now, when I've been reporting on this and I've met people who have been reading our reports or reading our newsletter, they say, well, who is the advocate? Very quickly, the Water Rate Board awards a no-bid contract to Community Legal Services to serve as the board's advocate. Community Legal Services has no client group, doesn't have to meet with a single community group, single labor union, single member of city council, single elected official. They don't have to meet with anyone, and they don't. The rate board does not have a written criteria to judge the effectiveness of its advocate. The board does not seek public input on the public's satisfaction with the advocate. And the board has never published a written evaluation of its advocate's effectiveness. So we don't know what the board thinks other than we know the board is happy with them because they keep giving them year after year after year after year, no bid contracts. This year, I'm going to ask for a copy of the contract and see what's in it, but they're going to deny it. They're going to tell me that I can't get that in discovery. but ask again because that's what we should continue to do. So who is CLS? Well, CLS many years ago was an organization that represent poor and working people. And it used to have client groups. But as the federal government stopped funding organizations like Community Legal Services, they had a choice to make. They could either figure out their own way of funding their work, or they could rely on wealthy people to fund them. Now, it's difficult. I don't want to say it's not. It's difficult for an organization like Community Legal Services to find money. But what they decided was, instead of having a client group, even having a client on the board of officers, they're going to do away with all that. And they're going to put corporate lawyers in charge of the poor people's law firm. So here are the board officers. The president is the corporate counsel for Lincoln Financial. Many people who are Eagles fans know the Lincoln Financial field. Lincoln Financial is not based in the city, it's based in the suburbs. The vice president is the corporate lawyer for a medical company that claims they have a way of shocking people out of depression. Whether it's a good system or a bad system, I'm not competent to say. Sounds a little weird to me, but it doesn't really matter for this report. All I'm saying is he's a corporate lawyer. The secretary, corporate lawyer for Fox Rothschilds. The treasurer, corporate lawyer for Duane Morris, two of the major law firms in the city of Philadelphia. When you look at who's at the Pennsylvania Society meeting in New York, where all the rich people get together with all the elected officials, these are the type of people that you see there. 90% of CLS's board members self-identify. I'm not saying it. When you go to their webpage and you look, 90% of the CLS members self-identify as corporate lawyers. Now, there are a few people on the list who don't identify as anything, so I don't really know what they are. But 90% say, I'm a corporate lawyer. Only one of the 26 members says that she's client eligible. Now, the reality is $20 a month sales tax, or as I say, they call it a surcharge, on a water bill looks very different if you make $250,000 a year than if you make $25,000 a year. It's not really anybody's fault, but that's the reality. If you make $25,000 a year, you're struggling to keep your head above water. Every dollar matters. If you're making $250,000 a year, $20 a month is coffee. Maybe it's a tip at the fast food restaurant, but it's not really significant. So as I said earlier, every other program for housing, for SEPTA, to help people who are struggling with homelessness, comes out of the city's operating budget and doesn't come from food. So would Community Legal Services say, the way we should fund food pantries and farmers markets is by having a surcharge on food, and we'll take that tax on food and we'll give it to have a food pantry? No one would think that's a good idea. No one. Everybody would be appalled if someone said, well, let's surcharge food in the city of Philadelphia, make it harder for people to put food on their table, so we can have money to help people who don't have enough. But yet they all look the other way when it comes time to go ahead and pay for water. They support that. And I just want to finish up, and so I'm dropping that. Here's what happens when you pay for the low-income program for water from a tax on water. It's the most regressive form of taxation imaginable. The less you make, the higher percentage of tax you pay to cover the cost of this program. In addition, the corporate lawyers who are on the CLS board, the corporations they represent, if they're not physically in Philadelphia, they don't pay a penny towards this program. And so CLS's advocacy to put the tax on the water bill to pay for poor people's needs, whether they mean it or not, is a way to allow the corporations to avoid carrying their burden. I'm going to keep following up with this. I know we're running out of time, and I do apologize. It's just so enraging to me that this happens every year. And every year the water bills get harder and harder to pay. The governor says, don't do this. And yet we allow it to happen.
All right. We'll be back next week on Hall Monitor.